Hello and welcome to the CBB Super Show on the FTN Network. I am your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85, the niche sports connoisseur y'all know and love. It is National Championship Monday. The crown is over, CBI, NIT, all that stuff. And we were here, a bittersweet moment in which the national title game is here. We love it. One final opportunity for us to make some money to the old bankroll. But at the same time, college basketball ends for approximately the next 6.5 months. Now, there'll still be plenty of stuff going on, the transfer portal, coaching stuff. There's a lot, roster building, and we're still going to continue to pump out content there for those of you who are diehards like myself. But it is very, very sad that we have come to the end here for the season. Anyways, if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, also welcome. Please all come together here on the YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share, make sure you're subscribed, notifications on for the FTN Network and DubDeuce85 on all social media platforms so you do not miss anything that is going on here. Now, you might notice, what's the deal here? What do I got popped up here on the screen? So those of you guys know, the Elite Eight game against Texas Tech, I had proclaimed if Florida wins this game, they were down by like 9 at the time, I'm going to shave my beard off. And you guys knew I loved it. I shaved it off live on air. And I did that gladly, willingly. And, if nothing else, I'm a man of my word. Similar position we were in during the Final Four on Saturday. Florida, they looked a little bit shaky, although it was a great second half, but it seemed a little bit dire. And I personally needed Walter Clayton to clear 32 underdog points for a nice large parlay of sorts that had already got hit early in the day with Juwan Gary and Tyson Dagenhart fantasy points. So really just needed Clayton. So, in all my infinite wisdom and my sacrifices to the karma gods, because you guys know I'm very superstitious. I mean, there's nobody, I don't think there's a lot of people out there in the space that are more superstitious than I am. So as you can see on the tweet there, I made the proclamation, if Walter Clayton scores over 32 underdog points and Florida wins this game, I'll bleach my head like we're back in 1999, rocking the Slim Shady LP. Not only did Walter Clayton score and break the 32, I think he ended with like 37, but Florida came back and won the game as well. Fantastic. We love it. Florida did it. Now we're into the national championship game against Houston. Okay, so that is what we have to do, and we've got to keep this going. So that being said, ta-da, there we are. Let it be known I am a man of my word, and I will do what I say I'm going to do. So we are rocking the bleached hair. It's a bit orange. It's a bit yellow. My toddler son is like, Daddy, your hair is yellow. And I was like, you're right, son. You're right. My youngest daughter doesn't understand what's going on. Why she's starting to hate Florida because, especially Walter Clayton, because of all these things I have to do. Now, I also said I would shave my head after. So I had to do this on air to really maximize the karma. But we'll be shaving this off here when I'm done, and I will be fully bald. And that leads me to my next thing. What are we going to sacrifice tonight to ensure that Florida wins? Now, Florida, I've got the future on Florida, which is a very favorable one, 18-1 that we made back in January. Also have a 9-1 on Houston. So we're going to definitely do well either way, but Florida is definitely the one we're backing. And if you have any ideas for me, feel free to DM and let me know. Running out of things to sacrifice here. I guess legs next. Gosh, I don't know. Do that whole Nair thing. But yeah, I try to be the best sport I can. And like I said, I never want to be the reason karma is bad. Superstitious goes sideways. That Florida State fan that said he would eat white dog poop or whatever, and that Florida State's, kind of cursed season. So we're never going to go to that. So here it is. I did it. We're rocking it. And yeah, if I was going to keep it, I'd probably do a little bit more to turn it white. But since it's going to be gone here shortly, this is what you get. All right, let's get into the slate here. Let me get this going. Share screen. But yeah, let it be known, I will never, ever go back on my word. And I hope you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys all know that by now. So yeah. All right, we're going to pull up the projection screen here. As you can imagine, it is a little bit of a tougher scenario here. We're doing showdown, so you're not going to see a ton. I think value-wise here on showdown, we're talking about a situation where we're shooting for really like 3x, right? Most of the time. Let me get my screen adjusted here the correct way. Anything over that, if you're getting players in that 4.5x range, you're really, going to be into big territory. Get 2 to 3x out of some of your pay ups and you feel pretty good, 5x plus out of values, and really put yourself in a position here and trying to find that differentiation points. Yesterday on the Crown Title Showdown slate, Juwan Gary as captain was really the way to go. The popular build was Tyler Hendricks as captain, to be able to fit all 3 pay ups. And then we saw like Cale Jacobson, and that was an interesting way to go. With showdown, it can be very tricky on ones that don't have injury news, because that's the biggest edge in showdown, I think. So a lot of decisions going to be made here. Do you play a pay up at captain? Do you go with a cheaper option? Do you go with a more balanced approach? So we're going to talk about all that here. And if you're watching live, whether it's on Twitter/X or YouTube, feel free to drop comments, questions, concerns, and we can kind of talk about it here as we go. Getting into the game logistics here, it is a 1-point spread in favor of Florida, total of 140.5. Now on DK, it opened at +1 Florida. I do have the screenshot because I got a small bet in there and they didn't reject it, but most other books, I believe, opened at -1.5 Florida, and now DraftKings is, of course, -1 too. So it's a very short window there, and a surprise because I definitely think Florida should be favored here. But it's a pick 'em. Let's not get it twisted in any way, shape, or form. Starting the way we always do, projected starting lineups. It's pretty easy with these teams, right? Walter Clayton, Will Richard, Elijah Martin, Ruben Chignello, and Alex Condon. On the Houston side, Manny Sharp, Juwan Roberts, Milo Zuzan, LJ Cryer, and Joe Tugler. Injury designations, transfer portal designations, really nothing. Ramon Walker remains out/doubtful like he has, but essentially both teams will have the pieces that they need. Now, Florida, they're a bit deeper, right, than Houston, and I know depth can be a bit overrated. First, I think depth's underrated coming into the tournament, and then I think it becomes a little overrated as we get to the Elite Eight and beyond, because you're just playing your guys 38, 39 minutes, right? But this could become a problem, especially in the front court, if any foul trouble happens. The way that Florida likes to get after it on drives, the way Houston plays physically, like there's a good chance Joe Tugler gets himself into foul trouble. There's a good chance Condon or Thomas Hoff or Ruben Chignello gets into foul trouble. So that depth, it could become an arms race very, very quickly. And if Houston gets down into the situation where, Roberts has 3+ fouls, Tugler has 3+ fouls, Francis is out there with 3+ fouls, it can get very ugly very quickly. And I think Florida has the coaching staff under Golden to really recognize that and really continue to relentlessly attack here. So it's going to be a very intriguing matchup in terms of who can control their fouls the most. Very simplistic view there, but that's really what it's going to come down to. So starting off here with captain options, I think it's very obvious where I want to go. I think, and for the most part, it's going to be tough. Walter Clayton Jr. at 17.4K in that captain slot. In the utility, it's 11.6. We're going to have to take some value shots on guys, and that's going to make it difficult. But how do we not get Walter Clayton? Definitely in the lineup. There's no doubt about it. Like, we're not fading Walter Clayton. I'm not. But I think we might get a little bit of leverage here using him in the captain spot. And I'm you know me, I'm not one to kind of fall in line like, oh, this guy's the best captain option. He's the most expensive. Like, wow, you're a genius, Dub. Like, honestly, right? And I get that. But I think a lot of the builds we see out there from our opponents are going to play someone else in captain just because of how expensive it is, yes, but also the fact that they're playing Houston's elite defense. Now, Walter Clayton is a absolute menace, and we know in the second half, specifically the last 9 to 10 minutes, he's going to turn it on. He flips the switch and he just becomes unstoppable, and he generates a ton at the free throw line. So we're going to be looking at some Walter Clayton point props here in a second as well, but I just feel like anyone can do it against Houston. It's going to be Walter Clayton. And we know Cooper Flagg just had a really good game. To Houston's credit, they did a great job on the guards. Conka Nipple gave them a little bit of trouble. Granted, he's pretty tall. But Walter Clayton, man, is just absolutely that dude. The very definition of clutch, right? There's a ton of occurrences throughout the history of the tournament where you can look through and be like, wow, that was an amazing clutch performance. Cardiac Kemba for UConn back in the day. right? We Shabazz Napier for UConn a few years later. Like there's been some really clutch performances. And Walton Clayton, if Florida can seal the deal, puts himself right up there on the pantheon of clutch performers. 40 plus fantasy points in back-to-back games and brought the team back from the dead against Texas Tech, a game in which Texas Tech probably wins 90% of the time. But just the fact that Walter Clayton's giving up open layups to shoot fall-away threes, contested fall-away threes, and hitting them, sometimes you just tip your cap and be like, we got beaten by the better man. His usage rate has touched around 29% in 4 of their 5 tournament games. Expect that to continue. And like I said, we're going to have to really make some sacrifices here. A more balanced approach to the slate could make some sense, but I just don't want to miss out on a Walter Clayton 40 to 45 in that captain slot, especially if he's going to be under 20% owned at captain. He'll be much higher as a utility piece, clearly, but I think the captain spot's going to go a little bit under owned, and that's a very unique spot here because typically on the showdown, we see a high ownership on that most expensive player or a, very clear option / asset like Walter Clayton. Guards win in March. We know that. And then you can't overlook the fact that I've made my peace with the karma gods. I've shaved my beard. I've bleached my hair. I'm about to shave my head. I'm going to find something here to push the Gators along and Walter Clayton. So they have that modifier going for them as well. You just can't overlook that. Switching gears to the Houston side, for the captain slot, you're probably expecting some LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan talk. Because again, guards win in March. I got to tell you, if I'm running a Houston captain or a captain that's not Walter Clayton in general, I think I'm going to Juwan Roberts, which may surprise you. He's 12K at the captain slot, 8K in utility. Just a veteran bomb, like just an absolute leader, stud, the guy for this team. During the senior night when he was injured, like everybody was crying, like nobody wants this guy to leave the program like he's going to have to do, and going out on top as the national champions and as an ode to Jamal Shead, because I truly believe Houston would have been in the Final Four last year had Shead not gotten hurt and may have possibly won the entire thing, although that UConn team was tough. But I think rolling the veteran leader in Juwan Roberts in the captain slot over LJ Cryer or Milos Uzan gives you a discount, yes, but it also gives you a different look because I'm not so sure many people will do it. Going up against a front court of Florida's that's loaded with depth. And like I said, foul trouble is going to be very critical here. But if we can get Roberts into that 33 to 35 minute range, it's going to be an absolute huge statistical performance. And in the NIL / transfer portal era, there's really something to be said about one, continuity, which both teams have, and experience, tournament experience, especially deep tournament experience, which obviously Houston has. So Roberts is the look for me. I was very impressed with the way that he handled Duke's front court. 11 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, a block, 2 steals. He was just absolutely getting after it. And that is the second time in the last 3 tournament games in which he's usurped 10 or more rebounds. Not going to be a huge score. We're looking at 10 to 12 points, but with the way he provides us secondary and peripheral stats, you have to feel pretty comfortable with him. And I think he's a fairly contrarian captain spot because most people are going to go to the guards, and this is kind of the game that guards take over. But do not sleep on Roberts. I think he's crafty enough. I think he is a guy that knows how to draw fouls, and he's going to be able to do some things that gets Florida front court options into some trouble. So Roberts is my lean for a Houston captain. Also like Manny Sharp to a degree, who would be 10.5K at captain. 7K in utility. They've done a pretty nice job of pricing guys here. Sharp is like the prototypical Caleb Love type of play here. There's a level of or a degree of volatility with Sharp. He's capable of being on that GPP winning lineup, but on the flip side, he's capable of being the primary reason you wind up dead last, DFL, if it were. But he's taken a ton of shots, 25 threes in the past 3 games. He's really stepped up when Uzan get into uncharacteristic foul trouble, or LJ Cryer just disappeared, couldn't shoot, Sharp is there chucking, and Sampson is allowing it to happen. So 25 threes in the last 3 games, but he's also making just under 30% of those, or 37% of those. So not only is the volume there, but the semi-efficiency has been as well. And his shot rate's risen over 23% during this stretch. He's making about 42% of his long-range jumpers for the full year. So this Houston team is an elite three-point shooting team. We know that. I don't think Manny Sharp gets enough credit for that. We know he won't be afraid to shoot those threes. So if you're running a Houston captain, Roberts would be my primary, but I don't mind Manny Sharp as a captain. Probably more of a large field move, but very easily could get hot and shoot them through there. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup there. As far as any other Florida captains, I'm really laser visioned on Walter Clayton, but if he just can't make it work, I would look to probably Thomas Hauf, who has been really good, we know, or Will Richard over Elijah Martin even. Elijah Martin's scoring at a high level. Man, he's throwing down dunks. It's great, but the peripherals haven't been quite there. With Richard, they have been. 6 rebounds, 3 steals against Auburn, which I was very impressed with. He had 6 rebounds against UConn, 3 steals against them as well. The problem with Will is the shot's not falling right now. He's shooting an abysmal percentage. He has made 0 of his 3-point attempts over the last 2 games, and they're really going to need him here to step up. The defense is really going to cheat over on Walter Clayton a lot more than even Auburn did last game. Those shots will start falling for him. He is a bit of a first-half player, so I'm looking at some first-half props for him over at Underdog, but he is definitely a guy they're going to need, and he won't be afraid to shoot. There has been some foul occurrences here in the first half of the last 3 games. We need to avoid those. But look out for Will Richard, because I think he's going to be the forgotten man here, and he would be a very sneaky captain option as well at 10.8K. In the utility slot, he is 7.2, so there is some merit for a more balanced approach. But those would be the 4 players that I'm really looking at as the captain options. When you get into the utility, LJ Cryer, Milos, Uzan, I'm going to reference the projections here in a minute. I'm just going to go through the player list. One of the more frustrating aspects here to this Houston team, fantasy purpose wise, the Cryer Uzan struggle, they don't go off together, rarely at all, and certainly not in the tournament. Like, it'll be a big time LJ Cryer performance like it was against Gonzaga. And then you'll see Uzan, he's okay. And then you'll see Uzan, who had the monster game, was it against Texas Tech, right? Or not Texas Tech, getting myself confused here. Tennessee. Shot well in the first half, not so much in the second half. LJ Cryer woke up and shot in the second half, ended up putting up a much larger number. Uzan ended at 15 when it looked like Uzan in the very first 5 minutes was headed for a 30. He put up almost 37 against Purdue because he shot extremely well, and in that game, Cryer didn't. It's uncanny. Game to game, yes, but even first half to second half. And Uzan didn't start out well against Duke. Played a little bit better in the second half, but he was relegated to sub 30 minutes because of the foul issues that he had. And LJ Cryer really took over that second half, which speaks volumes about how this works. Manny Sharp also kept them afloat there for a while. So you can even look into it. Gonzaga game, Cryer, absolute dominance, 41 fantasy points. Uzan had under 25. Purdue game, Cryer didn't play less minutes, but shot only 2 for 13. Abysmal. Put up 20. Uzan put up the huge game, and then 34 and 38 for Cryer over the last 2. So expect to see a little bit more ownership probably on LJ Cryer because he's been the more consistent statistical performer here for Houston. But I think Uzan could definitely be the sneaky one here, and especially if it gets hot once more. And you got to figure Florida is going to be trying to harass Cryer a lot more and paying attention to him, but it would be a mistake to lose sight of Uzan. And there's a huge difference in the captain prices, which I'm not going there with them, but 15.3 for Cryer compared to 13.5 for Milos, and then 10.2 compared to 9K for utility. But both are super expensive, and I feel like I'm going to be underweight compared to the rest of the field on those two. Which may or may not be a mistake, but I'm really going heavy on the Houston front court, Florida guards. Speaking of Florida front court, it is a rotation and production-based rotation at that. Thomas Hauf coming off the bench. He's been incredible. We know that. His salary is going to be very, very difficult to get to. You're talking about a 10K price point in the utility for a reserve in name only. gets starter minutes and 15K at captain. It may not be the best, or it may not be the worst decision. He's clearly the best fantasy asset of the 4 to 5 options we have in the front court, but geez, you're not playing him with Clayton. You're just not going to get those two together unless you really punt out with some, I don't know, hand logged in, Francis, Arsenault type options. And I just don't know you'll have the upside there if you do so. But he's been incredible. Prop them up heavily against Texas Tech in the first half. He was absolute menace against Maryland, and he scored 28 plus DK points in 3 straight games. You go back to the first game against Norfolk, he put up 28 there too. So 4 or 5 tournament games, he's been well over 25 fantasy points. So he's the obvious one, but then you got the cheaper prices down here, and you're looking at like Alex Condon, who clearly hasn't looked himself since rolling the ankle. He has been absolutely dreadful. He has hit 20 or more fantasy points in 2 of the 5 tournament games. He dominated against Norfolk State, as you would expect, and he had a pretty solid outing against Texas Tech, 7.7 rebounds. But his minutes are pretty capped under 30 because of the rotation. We're going to see Hoff play about 25 to 28. We're going to see Alex Condon play about 25 to 28. So if you're playing one, Condon is certainly, from a strategic and lineup construction standpoint, the move over Hoff, but the production may not be there. And I think the price is just too much for us to look at. I'm instead dropping down to Ruben Chignello, and I think most people will. I'm certainly not telling you anything sneaky that you don't already know. Chignello had a masterful second half against Auburn, rebounded extremely well, got some steals, affected a lot of shots, didn't actually register a block, but he impacted a ton. And he's directly responsible for containing Janai Broome in the second half. I don't think enough chatter there because of the Walter Clayton performance, the Elijah Martin breakaway dunk. Like, those things deserve their flowers, certainly, but the adjustment at halftime that Coach Golden made and getting Chignello onto Broome primarily, it really made a difference. Now, granted, Broome was clearly not 100%. They tried to lead us to believe that. Bruce Pearl saying he's fine. He wasn't fine. He gassed out. There was clearly some soreness there, and he just didn't look like the same player in the second half. But Chignello deserves all the credit in the world for being one of the primary reasons there that Broome was so uncomfortable. And one of the more impressive things that Chignello did was avoid foul trouble in that second half. We usually can't count on him because he fouls at such a high clip, but he did a masterful job of defending, impacting shots, and not getting into foul trouble. His let me pull it up here. His fouls called rate per 40 is quite high, 6. If this were the NBA, I guess that'd be fine. Get 6 per 40. But this is not. We get 5. So very, very risky there, but that price mitigates that. And he's one of the top value pieces on the board. And I do believe in single entry, high dollar, cash games, all of that, he will be extremely high owned because of that price discount that we're getting. And they're going to certainly need him. Houston, they play tough. Intensity is there. They're going to need that toughness. Foul trouble once again coming into play here. But Ruben Chignello at 4-2 is a necessary utility piece here. We hope it's a game in which he plays 22, 23 minutes like against Auburn, and it's not a game like against Texas Tech where he played 11, or UConn where he played 14 because of foul issues. And UConn is probably, when you look at the list here, Auburn, Texas Tech, Maryland, UConn, Norfolk, of the teams they played, in terms of intensity, physicality, front court opponent, UConn probably mirrors the best. I know Maryland had Derek Queen and Julian Reese, but they got kind of taken out of their game. UConn really is the game I'm looking at here for Chignello. And at 4-2 in a showdown format, if he gives us 6.7 rebounds like he did against UConn, I think we feel pretty darn good about it. We just need him to get to that 20-minute mark. And if he does so, he's certainly going to wind up on the optimal. And you see he sits at the top of the projections right now. One of the few players that is above 4X, but again, we want to kind of lower our expectations down and go with a more 3X marker. But Chignello at 4.22X there, it's 17.72 fantasy points. Definitely has to be a guy that we get in there. Let me fix this. Now, some other guys that aren't going to project quite as well, but are at least somewhat interesting as value darts. Denzel Aberdeen. He clearly, to me, and I think anyone who's watched him, he was so good during that stretch of games that Elijah Martin was out. He could start on 75 to 80% of programs. I think it'd be pretty easy. Like, kudos to him for sticking around, because he could have gone to a number of programs, certainly at the mid-major level, but I'm sure there's some other high major programs out there that would love to have a player of Denzel Aberdeen's caliber. So with that being said, if he has to come in because there's ineffectiveness shooting the basketball from Will Richard, or there's foul issues on Will or Elijah Martin, which we've seen in this tournament, Aberdeen can give them quality minutes. And right now, I kind of have him pegged for 15, but that number could push towards 20. And if it does, he's paying off this price at a very, very minuscule ownership. He's only 3.2K. I think it'd be more apt to take this chance in Maine if he was like 2K. But looking at the context and the way that these lineups are coming together, Aberdeen makes a ton of sense. I would trust him more than like Terrence Arsenault, which we'll talk about in a second. You saw he played 20 minutes against Texas Tech, 15 against Auburn, 19 against Maryland, and 13 against UConn. Has scored double-digit fantasy points in 2 of their 5 tournament games, but both of those were the games in which they blew out Norfolk, and they were comfortably ahead of Maryland. So not a main team play, but Aberdeen, you know, he's capable of knocking down a couple of triples here. If he can give us a rebound and assist, maybe even a steal, like, he's paying this off. So Aberdeen is one to look to for the Florida side. Now on Houston, you really have the 3 main reserves: Javier Francis, Milik Wilson, and Terrence Arsenault. Wilson is clearly not 100%. He played just 8 minutes in their last game against Duke, dealing with whatever injury that is. Against Tennessee, he played 24. 20 against Gonzaga. Like, this is their primary bench piece, and at 5K he'd be very playable if I thought that he was healthy enough to get 20 plus minutes, and I'm just not so sure that's going to be the case. I am deeply concerned about Milik Wilson, and he's just high enough to really do some serious damage to your lineup if you play him and he gets you, you know, he plays 10 minutes. So treading carefully there, which really leaves us with Francis and Arsenault. Now, Francis is there at 4.6, and the angle here is that, okay, Roberts got into foul trouble or JoJo Tugler got into foul trouble. Francis has to come in here and give us quality minutes, especially if either of those front court starters for Houston gets into early foul trouble, because then we're talking about 19 to 20 minutes for Francis as opposed to 12 to 13. In the projections, I have him a little bit low minutes-wise, just because I have to assume, like, if there's no foul trouble, he's playing 12 minutes, right? That'll jump up if he does. And we know the fantasy point per minute number for Javier is extremely high, and he can definitely pay off a 4K price tag at 15 minutes, especially here against a Florida team that's tough. But I think there's an opportunity here for Francis to get a ton of rebounds if he is actually on the floor. Rates-wise, he has incredible rebounding numbers. His usage is about 18%, okay? Shot rates below 15%, I get it. But an 18.4% defensive rebounding rate, a 14.8% offensive rebounding rate, and he has a block rate of nearly 9%. 5.5 fouls called per 40, very high with Chinyello there. He also draws about 4 fouls per 40 as well. But Francis could be an integral part of what Houston has to do, especially in the first half. We'll get a sense of how the officials are calling this game very, very quickly, and then we'll know. But there's going to be some risk here with these values. We know it. And then you got Terrence Arsenault. I really liked Arsenault heading into the last game there against Duke. He won a couple of state titles in the Alamo Dome, playing with Wesley Yates at that. And I had a feeling that he would see more minutes and really have the opportunity to do some things. Now, he did play 15 minutes, and a lot of that came in the first half. I did have them in my notes. He played about 10, 11 minutes in the first half, and then basically not anything in the second because, of course, they were on their comeback trail, and the starters played most of that half. But 11 minutes in that first half, shot 0 of 4, missed his only 3 attempt, had 4 rebounds. If he would have hit that 3, maybe hit the jumper, he had a layup attempt that ended up being a foul, and they called it on the ground. Like, there were so many opportunities there that he could have actually paid out. And in Showdown, it's a lot different. And that's 3.8 price, 9 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points. That would really do the job for us. And I look at that Tennessee game, which got out of hand late, but he hit 2 triples, had a couple of rebounds. He put up 11.5. 10 to 11 fantasy points at this price is totally possible, totally reasonable to project. And I think Arsenault might be a really, really solid piece, strong piece at that people are just not going to look at. On the Showdown, anybody who is a capable producer tends to be 25% or more. So if you get an opportunity to play a guy who's in the rotation that'll be rostered by less than 10 to 15% of the field, you really have to consider them. So it wasn't that long ago, mid-season, Arsenal was putting up, 25, 26, 27 fantasy point games. I know they had some guys banged up. This guy can go. Absolutely. He's another one, kudos to him, similar to Denzel Aberdeen, could start for a number of other programs, but he stays here with Samson and continues to grind his way through. We don't need a lot for him in Showdown, but respect. I do like Terrence Arsenault, and I am pushing that angle that, hey, he won a couple of state titles here in the Alamo Dome, which obviously doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but this is a player coming off the bench that won't wilt under pressure, and you can give him those second half minutes if you need to. But he's another one that's going to probably have to get there in the first half. I think we're going to see a chess match in the first half and a little bit of a higher rotation rate of players, which may be frustrating at first. And then the second half, we see them buckle down, play their starters majority, get some key subs in there, maybe one or two, and run that 7-man rotation on both sides. And in Houston's case, it's probably more like 6. So those are your value pieces. Mentioned Manny Sharp, front court options. Elijah Martin, if you want safety, I think he's a great look. Doesn't have the upside of some of the other options in this game. Threw down an absolutely thunderous dunk. Big time scorer, any situation, early game, mid game, crunch time. He can do it all. It's a little expensive at 8.4 there in the utility, but if I'm doing any builds that don't have Walter Clayton in them, you better believe I'm going Elijah Martin. You're going to find a way to go Martin and Will Richard in any lineup that doesn't have Walter Clayton. That's just kind of a no-brainer there with how you want to build. So keep that in mind. Elijah Martin will be one of those players that gets that 25 to 30% ownership range, just from one-offs and other type of builds that people are trying to do. Full 5-1 Florida stacks, but he's definitely a guy that I think could end up in the optimal on a very solid by the book 4-2 type of build. Core wise, Walter Clayton and Juwan Roberts, those are the two players that I am not going to be fading in main, and will have, pretty much by any circumstance and any build, I'm going to have those two guys, probably rotating them between captain and utility. Those are the two horses that I'm the two core pieces that I'm really just going to be highly involved in. If I either have a bad game, then it's going to be a bad slate for me. Just because I think Clayton gets the lower rostership in captain, and I think Roberts is the same. All right, best bets. I do like Florida money line. I'm taking my Gators here. I'm going to be. I have exposure to both from futures, so truly do make profit either way, but the Florida ticket is a lot more. So I'm rooting for Florida here. I do think that they ultimately get it done. It's gonna be close. I want no part of. It's only 1 point, right? But I just taking this money line. Florida wins straight up. No funny business. No shenanigans. Let's do it. Over on FanDuel, we have Walter Clayton at 19.5 points. It's -115. So over 19.5 points. Yes. Then I also like a few for most outstanding player. If Florida wins, it's going to be a no-brainer. Walter Clayton's -110 on FanDuel. I mean, just who else on Florida would win the MLP at this point if they win the title? There's just no way. And I do like a sprinkle, a smattering, a smidgen, if you will, on Juwan Roberts to win most outstanding player. It's +1,600. That's worth a shot, right? LJ Cryer's +170, Manny Sharp +950, Milos Uzan +2,000. But you have to take into effect the Final Four game, which I think will ultimately, unless Uzan puts up like a 30-piece or something, right? But I think you're probably looking at Cryer for the most part if Houston wins. But Juwan Roberts had a good enough game in the first game in the Final Four, and if he has another double-double here, it's a solid chance. It's worth that +1,600 bet. So those are a couple of the MOP bets that I'm looking at. Walter Clayton's points, which I just mentioned. Let's take a look at some of the underdog stuff here. If we wouldn't get hit with a copyright strike, I would be playing. What the heck? I would be playing some Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers LP stuff here. But alas, not able to do that. All right, what's going on here? What's going on here with my stuff? All right, we're gonna pull it up on the mobile here. I don't know why my account is messing up on me. All right, we're looking for some first half stuff here. This is what we want. If they're going to give us any, they're probably not. We got 9.5 first half points for Walter Clayton. Let's see what the Will Rashad stuff is. As a first half player, that's what I want to see. So his prop is 10.5 points. I do like the over there. He's been under that the last couple of games, but definitely feeling that. Kudos to UD. They're offering no first half point props for Will. I was going to be all over that. His fantasy point total is 19.95. I do like that. You got to remember UD scoring though, -1 for a turnover, +3 for steals or blocks. So that's advantageous. Do like the over on that. Ruben Chinyello, points plus rebounds sitting at 11.5. Kind of like that one as well. Walter Clayton over 19.5 points. I already mentioned that. His fantasy total 29.85. They've been off with like the 3 most profitable fantasy point props all week on your underdog have been Juwan Gary overs, Tyson Dagenhart overs, and Walter Clayton overs. Those 3 have been smashing their fantasy point props repeatedly. And the tickets that I show the last couple of days there always include those guys. So I'm going to be in on that. I get it. It's Houston. There could be some turnovers, but you already know Clayton's going to put up 10 to 12 real points in that last 5 minutes. I got to think that he can get over 30 here per UD scoring. We just have to avoid too many turnovers there. Let's see what Elijah Martin is. I do like Elijah Martin over 12.5 points. Over 1.5 3-pointers made is another one that I like for Martin. Walter Clayton's is 2.5, which I know it sounds like a lot, but he's probably hitting 3, so I like that over as well. I would lean into Uzan under 12.5 points, but over 1.5 3-pointers made. I do think he hits a couple of clutch threes, but I'm not as confident in his overall scoring here. I think it continues to be the LJ Cryer affair. Alex Condon has some props that are very intriguing. 19.95 fantasy points for Condon, and I do like his prop here, which is points plus rebounds at 13.5. I like the over on that one as well, and straight up over 6.5 rebounds. And then one more here, JoJo Tugler taking the under 5.5 rebounds. It's 1.1x. I just think he's going to be in foul trouble. So that one's just a script analysis there where I think JoJo's going to struggle a little bit to stay on the court. I hope he stays on the court. I love JoJo Tugler, but I think he is going to have a little bit of problems there. So that's the UD here. All right, we got some comments. Game starting at 8:50 is so bad. Yeah, I was talking to somebody about this earlier. This is where it's nice being on the West Coast because it ends up being, basically a 6 o'clock tip for me, which is nice. But and you East Coast guys get kind of hosed there. But the trade-off is Saturday mornings from August until now. It's 9 a.m. for us on the West Coast starting. We got to get up. We do our thing the night before, but we got to get up sleepy-eyed, dreary-eyed, coffee, and do it at 9. And you guys got noon. So it's a little bit different. It's a trade-off, but I agree. Says the chip should be on a Saturday. I kind of feel like the tradition on Monday it's sacred. So I don't know if they should be messing around with that. Maybe adjust the time a little bit, maybe like an hour, but there's probably no real solution that can be had. The right one's probably to do the title game on a weekend, like you said, but then it messes up the scheduling, and it's kind of a sacred hallowed ground. I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be late for a lot of folks there. All right. I think that will wrap us up here. Yeah, just checking out some DMs here talking about there. So this will be it for college basketball, like obviously DFS fantasy content, but doesn't mean you've seen the last of me. I will have on Tuesday a full breakdown of 2026 odds and projected favorites. Obviously, that's a long, long ways from tomorrow, but going to do my best based on a few things: players that I project to return, transfer portal moves now, and what I expect to have happen, coaching changes, the makeup of the conference, all of that. So I'm going to have a few teams picked out there that I think are advantageous to bet now. Obviously, tying up money for 9 months isn't the most ideal thing, but there is an edge on a few that I've seen already, or I've heard some people talking about. So we're going to go in depth on that. That'll be an article that drops on the FTN betting side tomorrow. So if you're a member of the community, definitely check that out. But there'll be lots of stuff. I'm going to be covering the transfer portal player movement a lot. I'm working on a document that's going to have all that stuff that I'm really excited about. And then, of course, we've got WNBA, TBT, lots of opportunities there. And then before you know it, we'll be into NFL preseason, which I cover for FTN every year. Love it. And then we'll be into college football. And before you know it, we're pulling double duty with college basketball and college football. So it is going to go fast. The season went quick. The off season will go quicker, but it'll be a nice recharge, refresh. We sleep in May, according to John Rothstein, but do we really sleep in May? No, probably not. I'll leave the projection screen up there for a few more. You see, it's just really tough. Lower scoring slate, obviously, on these ones, but you don't need very high scores to really get it done. Once again, would highly advise that you get Walter Clayton into your lineup some form or fashion, Juwan Roberts into your lineup some form or fashion with Ruben Chiniello. Those three, and then work it out from there. If you think it's going to be a Houston dub, lean into that 4-2 Houston build. If you think it's going to be a Florida dub, I would almost go into like a 5-1 build. As opposed to the 4-2 for Florida, and just go Florida onslaught, because I do think with their shooters, they have a better chance of being optimal with a Gators heavier lineup than a Houston heavier lineup. Because Houston's best path to victory here is to muck it up, make it dirt, make it ugly, make it physical, and just really have a bunch of 2x type scores here if a Houston wins. So that'll do it. I appreciate the continued support. You guys have been amazing this whole entire season. It's been great. I absolutely love this community that we've built, and all of you that maybe if you're not signed up with FTN, you're still around for shows, you're still around on social media. You guys have support the SuperShow for over a decade now, since our Blog Talk Radio days, and it truly is a meaningful connection that I've built with all of you guys. And I mean, who else would be comfortable bleaching their hair like this and coming on the air and doing it for the community? And I only do that because you guys are such great sports with everything, and have continued to watch me through the years, whether that's in the morning, night, afternoon, whatever. So a lot of joy for me doing this. And honestly, a lot of people will say it but not really mean it, but I do like and almost prefer. Obviously, I want to win too, but I get more joy out of seeing you guys, hey, look at this screenshot. I just won a bunch of money. Hey, look what I did. Thank you for this play. Thanks for Nolan Hodge. Thanks for Posh Alexander. Thanks for whatever it is, Trevor and Queen. Like, I get a lot of joy out of that. That does it for me. That gets the endorphins flowing. So this is not the goodbye, just to see you later, right? And FTN Networks, where we'll be holding it down. Lots of off-season content coming your way. And like I said, blink, and we'll be into week 0 of college football. I'm already doing a ton with that, getting prepared. And I'm going to be doing best ball rankings for college football this season as well. So if you're a CFB player, get ready. It's going to be a fun one. Thanks, everybody. Let's get after it tonight. One shining moment. I'm not crying. You're crying. Thanks, guys.